Today on the First Time Storytelling broadcast, my guest is Carol Stratton. I did not ask you if that's the right way to pronounce your last name.
Yes.
All right, perfect. Carol is an author of inspirational fiction and a speaker to women's group. She's married with 4 children and 9 grandchildren and joins us from North Carolina. Carol is here to share the story of the first time she lived in a foreign country. Welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, Anne.
All right, I'm excited to hear the story. So let's go ahead. Let's frame your story a little bit for the audience. Tell us, how old were you? What was happening? And how did you find yourself living in a foreign country?
Well, actually, my parents set up private exchanges between families. So we had a Mexican family stay with a friend, a Mexican child stay with a friend of ours. And then she went back, and we did that because we were a little younger. And then when I got to be about 12, my parents said, well, hey, would you like to go to Mexico? And I was always kind of adventuresome. And I thought, well, okay, that might be kind of fun. I didn't know really what it would be like. But because my dad had this great experience with an exchange student, I think it was through Rotary Club, where he grew up in St. Louis. He was all up for that. So he set up with the friend of ours who had I think it was her sister-in-law, his sister-in-law. And so they lived in Mexico City, and I went with a family. They drove me because their son was going to be in an exchange too. And I grew up in California, so driving to Mexico was not a real big deal. It was a trip, but fairly convenient. So they drove me there, and there I was with my new family. It was a little overwhelming.
Okay, so before we get into your story, what year is this?
This would have been in 63, 2 or 3, I think.
Oh, okay.
60, 63.
Because some people might be thinking like it's dangerous to go to Mexico. Your parents are just going to let you live with another family there. It's not through like a bigger program. Yes. But yes. It was a friend of a family.
Yes.
Family friends family.
Right. There was a definite connection. We really enjoyed this one family, and then it just sort of blossomed from there. But they knew the family, so it was kind of more comfortable. But Mexico City is huge, and I don't know if my parents realized quite what I was getting into. So it was quite interesting, but they wanted us to have that cultural experience and also to learn a language. So I did learn Spanish fluently. I'm terrible at it now, but I think if I would, be around it 24/7, I would re-pick up words, and I can understand a lot, but it doesn't come out real well.
Yeah. Okay, so you go on a road trip from California to Mexico with your family. You arrive at the house that's going to be your new home for 6 months. Tell us what happens.
Well, in Mexico, the Mexicans are very hospitable. So we knew this, and so we brought a lot of gifts. We met the family, we had dinner, and then I think the next morning they left, and the mother did not know Spanish, but the 2 older daughters were very good at, did not know English, but the 2 older daughters were very good at English. So that helped a lot. But they all worked. So I learned I was going to be alone a lot. There was an 8-year-old boy in the home, and Irene, who was probably about 2 years younger than me, she might have been 11 or 12. And we were alone a lot because there were 2 sisters and then a cousin, and the mom worked. She was a widow. So part of what I learned was how to entertain myself and how to watch TV in Spanish. And actually, that sounds funny, but I watched a lot of TV, and TV is a great way to learn a language because they have to speak clearly and there's actions and everything. Whereas your average person, just like in English, you just sort of run it by and you don't talk clearly because everybody kind of gets the gist of what you're saying anyway. But I truly learned a lot of Spanish by watching television.
So you weren't enrolled in school?
I was.
Okay.
I went to school. There was a private school that we went to in Mexico. Most of the middle class or upper class people, we were a middle class family, they put their children in not public school, but private schools. And I was in, of all things, a Jewish school. Now, my family was Catholic, but this was a very well-regarded school. And we took the bus and then walked a little bit. And we had to wear uniforms. That was a really new thing for me. And I sat in a classroom where they spoke Spanish all day long. I don't think the professor knew any English. So it was sort of a little overwhelming, but I took my little Berlitz book. I don't know if people use that anymore, but I would read it. And I was kind of teaching myself some of the, how to conjugate verbs and things like that. I figured I was losing a half a semester at school. I better at least learn Spanish pretty well. So yeah, the school was kind of tough, but it was just what we did. And then we would come home for lunch because in Mexico, you eat your big meal in the middle of the day. It's very much like they might do in Europe. I think they eat and then maybe their bigger meal in the middle of the day. And then we'd eat la cena would be at about 8 o'clock at night. Well, I was getting kind of sleepy at 8 o'clock at night, but I had to adjust to the meal schedules and the time change and staying awake and for dinner. So, but yeah, they would always come home and meet for the midday meal. And we would always have rice, a little bit of soup, bisteca, which is kind of just a very flattened beef steak that they would fry up, and always fantastic warm tortillas, real fresh. And I did not know how good tortillas were until I had fresh ones, and you get spoiled. But so it was just an interesting, really change of schedule. And just being kind of alone. Irene, the girl who was my age, was a bookworm, so she was reading all the time. So I just learned to read a little bit in Spanish newspapers. And I had one English book they had in the house. It was called How to Win Friends and Influence People, which is the most random thing a 12, 13-year-old girl would read. But I mean, hey, it was a book and I like to read, so I memorized it. And actually, that's a really great book. So we would go back to school and then come home again and just mess around. Didn't have a lot of recreation outside of the home. They don't have, at least at our house, did not have a yard. They had sort of a cordoned off courtyard, maybe a little tiny bit of grass. And the house was very, very modern looking, not a lot of clutter. Everything was a tile floor and just your furniture, maybe a picture here, not like how we decorate, go crazy in this country. And they had, I believe, 3 maids. And in Mexico, maids are very cheap to afford because they bring them in from the country. And we had one that did the washing and a couple that did the cleaning and the cooking. So, because mom worked and she didn't have time to do all that. So I kind of got to know the maids and they were pretty great, except for one day, one of the maids who was very close to my age, maybe a year or so older, she said to me in Spanish, "Oh, I love American clothes. Can I see your clothes?" And I was being so naive. "Oh yeah, you can see my clothes." I didn't think I had that great of clothes. There were 4 in our family and my mom sewed a lot, but you know, it was just a novelty to her to see American clothes. So I showed her my closet. Oh, pretty, pretty, and all this stuff. And the next day, she left the family, ran away with all my clothes. So
Oh no.
that was a big shocker. But the Mamacita, we call her, she had to write my mother. We didn't have email in those days, and calling long distance was very expensive. So she had to write my mom and say, would you please send some extra money? Your daughter doesn't have very many clothes. She might have left a couple outfits, but we had to go buy some more clothes for me. Well, that
Oh
was
man.
really crazy. But it was such a unique experience that even though it wasn't by day real exciting, the whole concept of living in another family, with another family, excuse me, and experiencing their customs was just, I enjoyed it thoroughly. I really did. I loved some of the new foods I could taste. They had a cajita, which is, I think it was cajita. Anyway, it was goat's milk. They take goat's milk and they make caramel sauce out of it. So it has a very peculiar flavor, but they love that. And they would get big spoonfuls and they would just put it on top of a fried tortilla. And that was dessert a lot of time. They're not big on a lot of desserts, but that was a big thing. And let's see.
So did you get homesick at all? Did you?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. I have 3 other siblings, and maybe just even not being able to fight with them. And we had a small house, and so it was, it was kind of hard. But my dad is a very good letter writer, and he would take this onion paper. It used to be that you had to use really, really thin paper because airmail was so expensive. So they'd get this thin onion paper, and he would type out all his letters. And I think back now, and I think, because he's gone now, I think I would not have had that correspondence and that ability to, hear his thoughts. And if I had been home, it was like he took that extra effort because he was busy with his job and raising kids and such. So I have a few of those letters, and that's very special. And people just wrote more. So I've got that memory because we've saved a lot of the letters. But it was really a hard situation in some ways because I was lonely, but it was fun too in another way. I got to experience a Mexican wedding. And in Mexico, you have 2 weddings. You have the civil wedding, where you go to the courthouse and sign off and everything. And then you have the big wedding. And everyone comes, and I got to have a new dress. And in Mexico, labor is very inexpensive, so they had one sewn for me, which was very exciting. I felt like, wow, that was cool. And the other thing that I really enjoyed is the family had a little ranch. I don't even know where it was, but it was way out in the country. It was extremely hot, very tropical. You had a lot of banana trees that were growing around there, and they had a bunch of goats in a goat pen. Well, I think goats are awesome. They are just the cutest animals. And so I was playing with the goats and everything. And that evening, they were doing an outdoor barbacoa, they called it. And they were cooking some meat and whatever. And they used some broth from the meat. And they made a very good soup. It kind of tasted like chicken soup, but it had a little bit of cilantro or green onions. And they wanted me as the gringo, the Americana, to taste it. Well, they didn't tell me what it was. They just gave it some weird name until after I'd eaten about half a bowl full. And then I found out that it was goat's brains soup. These little goats I was playing with.
Oh no.
They thought that was so funny. They tricked this American.
Oh.
But Oh, and I, growing up in California, did not experience humid weather. And I went down there and it was like Florida plus. So I learned what humid weather was. And I think we had just a lot, we just would walk around and it was a really fun time, but it was totally different than any camp experience I had.
Wow. So what was it like when you went back to your family? Like to have had this experience? Were things different now for you? Or did you feel like you were a different person going back home?
Yes, a little bit. I think I was a little more independent, and I remember my mother saying to one of her friends, I heard her on the phone say, "Well, I'm just about ready to send Carol back to Mexico." So I must have been a little stinker. But I think one of the hardest things was I left in the middle of 7th grade. And when I came back, it was 8th grade. Well, in 7th grade, that was the first time all the elementary schools in the area get together in, they're in junior high. So I had one semester to get to know some new friends. And then I left. Well, when I came back in 8th grade, they kind of, where have you been? And, they weren't too sure who I was. And a lot of people had already made friends. So I kind of had to deal with that. And fashion had changed while I was gone, believe it or not. Girls were not wearing socks. They were wearing shoes without socks. And I showed up with gray socks thinking it looked really cool. And realized I was the only girl in school that was wearing socks. So there were a lot of awkward things, which is awkward anyway. 8th grade is a very tough age. But I just remember it was hard to adjust. But I did.
Did you stay in touch with the family in Mexico?
A little bit, not a lot. Irene actually came back and lived with us. She was the girl that was a couple years younger than me. And she kind of had a rough time. She was extremely shy. And I'm not sure it was as good experience. Our family might have overwhelmed her because we're kind of loud and we're all in a small house. But I did keep up with them for a little while. Now, all my other siblings, my sister and my 2 brothers, all had great experiences, and they've kept up more. But I think because the mom was working and there was no dad in the home, and it was just a family of working women and the kids that were home. So it made it a little harder. But I still really am very happy I had that experience. I think as a teenager, when you go into being a teen, it really helps to have 1 or 2 great skills or just something that you can do that's maybe a little different. And I could speak Spanish. And the other thing is, Irene, my friend, and I would go on a bus and we would take guitar lessons. And that was the first time I played guitar. And so I had a little bit of a start of playing guitar, and I continued on with that. And I've loved music all my life, especially guitar music, but that really helped. So yeah, it was open.
It's a great story, and sounds like it was a really incredible experience. Like overall, of course, as as a young girl going to a foreign country and kind of,
big eyes.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely it was a unique situation to find yourself in too. That you're in this matriarch environment. Where everyone is independent, doing their own thing on their own, and you have to adjust to that but I can only imagine that imprint, left an imprint on you because your family was so different that now, you understand the possibility of a different environment. And sometimes we just don't know how impactful that can be. So
that's true. That's true. It also helped me be independent, I think. And we've actually moved a lot in our marriage. And I think, wow, if you can adjust to another country, it's not too hard to move to another state. So that was really helpful too.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. And then it's fabulous, that it looked like it brought you close, being away brought you closer to your dad, and that,
Yeah,
it's really
yeah,
heartwarming that he took the time to write those letters
yeah,
and
yeah.
send them to you, and you get to still have those.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I
So,
treasure those. Yes, that's
oh,
great. I'll
that's
tell you, one
awesome.
of the things that was really just fantastic, it was kind of a surprise. It was at night. It was about maybe 1 in the morning. And my sisters were all dating. And one sister had a boyfriend she was getting very serious with. And I woke up to mariachi music outside of the house. He had hired a band to serenade her. You know how you hear about that in the movies? It was so cool. It was like the middle of the night, and this music just coming up through the to the second floor in the balcony. And I just thought, boy, that would be so cool. Somebody was serenading me. I didn't have a boyfriend at that point, but it was just a really great experience. So
Oh, romantic.
yeah, very romantic, yes. I think
Oh,
Mexicans are romantic. I will say that.
oh, awesome. All right. Well, thank you for sharing your story. Now, before we start playing the first time lightning round, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, I have a website, carolgstratton.com. I'm also on Facebook, Carol Grace Stratton. That's my author um, Facebook page. And if you don't mind, I have my latest book. This is my first attempt at a children's book called The Littlest Bell Ringer. It's out right before Christmas.
Oh,
So
it's cute. I like the cover.
thank you, thank you. So I'm on Twitter. I'm working on Instagram. Let's see, I'm in LinkedIn. So there's several ways to get in touch with me. And I just love to hear from any readers or people who've enjoyed my speaking.
All right. How many books do you have?
I have 3 out, and I have a 4th one coming out. I have 2 that are traditionally published. Then this children's book I had published, self-published. But then in April, I will have the sequel to my first novel out. My first novel was Lake Surrender, and then the sequel will be Deep End of the Lake. It takes place in northern Michigan, where we lived in Michigan for years. So,
Oh, all right.
it's
So
fun.
now being in North Carolina, you get a little reprise from the cold weather.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, everybody gets excited when we have a little snow here, except for me. It's like I've seen enough snow the rest of my I grew up in California, so I had to adjust to the snow. And it's really beautiful, but I'll tell you, it's not fun to drive in, and it gets old.
Yep. Not a big fan. All right,
Yeah.
so let's get into it. Let's play the first time lightning round. So the way it works is I'm going to ask Carol 10 different first time options. If it's something she's done before, she's going to say up or swipe up. If it's something she's never done, not interested, we go left. And it's something she's never done, would like to do, then we go right. So this is similar to being on the 365 First Challenge app. Ready to go?
Okay.
All right, first one, eat at a Michelin star restaurant.
I would like to.
Okay, so
That
that
was
is a right. Right, we're adding it to the list. Okay, next one, play poker. Uh, do you remember your first time playing poker?
probably with my brothers.
Okay. Any good at it?
No, I'm terrible at it.
Okay.
I get very bored easily.
All right. Next one, meet a famous musician.
Oh, let me think.
Up. Who was the
I'm trying.
musician you
No, you
met?
know what? I actually no.
So
I would. I'd like to.
that's all right. All right.
Yeah.
Invest
Go ahead.
invest in stocks.
I would like to.
Oh, that's all right.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'd like to. Excuse me.
Yep. Meditate.
I've done that.
Done that. Go surfing. No, that's a left. Never done it. Don't want to do it. California girl's not a surfer.
No, no.
Okay. Ride on a hovercraft.
Oh, I'd like to do that. No,
Okay.
that's right. Like to, sorry.
That's a right. Yeah. We swipe a
I'll
right.
get it straight.
Okay. In the spirit of Halloween coming up, go on a ghost tour.
Haunted house, does that count?
It's more on like New Orleans, like certain cities have like walking ghost tours.
No, I haven't done that. I'd like to. That'd be fun.
So that's a right. Volunteer at a library.
I've had classes at a library. I've spoken.
Okay. Take a polar bear plunge.
Wow. No, thank you.
That's a laugh.
Cold in my life.
They actually do those in Michigan, don't they?
Know,
in Lake Michigan?
I know somebody who lives from it, and I can't understand how they survived it.
All right. Well, that concludes the first time at lightning round. The final question is, how have you been making the best out of the current situation with the pandemic?
Great question. I really was thinking, I don't want to waste this time. I don't know how long it's going to be. And actually for a writer, it was a gift because you're not getting distracted to go here and there. And I thought, well, I've always wanted to write a Christmas book. So I had my little spell ringer. I had the plot kind of set out, but I was only about a third done, and I got a push from my old publisher that, get it out. So I just went to it. Wasn't sure I knew how to do kids books, although I've, read and done some stuff, and had to get illustrations. That was a real tough one, but found a lady who did fantastic illustrations. And I just pushed myself. I thought, I just want to have something to show for this time. You hear me? I think you agree. And you get it.
I think that's that's a right mindset to have. It's like, if I'm going to do this, I need something to show for it.
Well, and it was very hard because it's real easy to just slack off and watch a little TV, just, mess around. So I had to really push myself. But you get used to pushing yourself as an author because you don't have a boss. It's you. And if it doesn't get done, if you don't do it, and it just takes a little bit every day, keep going. I'm sure you understand how that works, Sam.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's awesome. You got your first children's book done and published, and that's a big achievement. So, and you moved. So,
yes, I moved.
That's no small.
Don't do both at the same time. I don't recommend it.
That's no small accomplishment. Moving during this time, I can only imagine how, moving, it's one of the things it's on the top of my list of things that I hate to do.
Absolutely. I hear you. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's one of the top stressors in life.
Yeah. So it's like, I love going to places and I love not being in one place, but I hate the moving portion.
You don't want to haul your stuff to that place.
Which is why for about 10 years, the majority of my stuff ended up in storage. And then it was just get a place that's furnished and keep things very simple. And
there you go.
Yeah,
there you go.
But
that's
now
great.
That's like, things are established, like, I'm not moving anytime soon. I'm going to go places, but I'm not moving.
I recommend that. I actually wrote a moving book because we'd moved so much, called Changing Zip Codes, because I thought it is so hard to move and I want to help people through the process. But it's a tough one. It's a tough one.
All right. Well, Carol, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your story.
Thank you. I enjoyed it a lot. It brought back a lot of memories.